Farm to Early Care and Education, an introduction to the Farm to ECE concept for pre-K teachers. To get started today, I wanted to say thank you to all educators, family members, and community members. You all do so much for our children and families each and every day. We appreciate you and are so grateful. In Farm to ECE initiatives and any work that we're doing, land is so integral to the work that we do. We need to acknowledge that we are on stolen land and center our work around Indigenous and Native voices. Here's a map of NC tribal and urban communities. What are our goals and aspirations for this webinar? First, it's to introduce the Farm to ECE concept to pre-K teachers. It is also to highlight how centers are incorporating Farm to ECE. And lastly, the goal of this webinar is to provide resources for further learning and support. Here is a roadmap of what we will be talking about today. We'll first discuss what is Farm to ECE, and then we will talk about why it is so important. We'll then be able to see what Farm to ECE looks like in the garden, in the classroom. And finally, we'll finish up with additional resources to support ongoing learning. What is Farm to ECE? Farm to ECE includes increasing access to three things: local food sourcing, school gardens, and food and agricultural education. It increases access to these three things in order to enhance the quality of the educational experience in all types of ECE settings. This includes preschools, child care centers, family child care homes, Head Start, and Early Head Start. At the core of this work is racial equity. This means that the work includes increasing an understanding of how structural racism, white supremacy, and racial inequity affect young children's learning outcomes. We do this in order to advocate and create policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that create equitable systems for kids, families, and communities. Why is Farm to ECE important? Farm to ECE is important for kids, farmers, and the community. For kids, it can increase their willingness to try healthy foods and create positive, powerful connections to food and community at a critical time in their lives. For farmers, it can represent a whole new market opportunity for growers. It can also give farmers the chance to connect with potential customers and grow the next generation of farmers. And lastly, for the community, Farm to ECE is a strategy that aims to strengthen a community's food security and create lasting connections among farmers, suppliers, ECE professionals, parents, caregivers, and children. All three of these things are platforms for advancing racial equity in these multiple sectors of Farm to ECE work. Farm to ECE is even more relevant during a pandemic and a post-pandemic world in supporting providers in meeting the needs of children and families. Here are a few of many examples of how Farm to ECE is so important during this time. So let's take a look at Farm to ECE in practice.
Farm to ECE doesn't have to be one more thing. Like, it can just be in place of something else that they're doing. And that's why the Reach for the Stars document is perfect, because it takes all the, I think there's 6 subscales within ECHRS, um, and breaks it down, like, what are some farm to ECE things that you can do within the 6 subscales, like within space and furnishings, within language and literacy, so that you're still meeting your ECHRS, but you just meet it by doing farm to ECE. So when I'm talking to child care centers, that is the first thing, that I stress for sure. You can still teach and do math and do physical activity and teach nutrition at the same time. And so I think that's important to take that approach. One of the things that I do with my centers that I work with is just make sure the books that they have farming books. Have them talk about fruits and vegetables. Have them talk about seeds and gardening and dirt and worms. To have kids draw a garden that they wanted, and what would they have in their garden. And they could use like different things with art, pipe cleaners and cotton balls.
Culture is about communication, courtesies, roles, rituals, customs, relations, manners of interacting, thoughts, values, expected behaviors, and practices. And when we're talking about culture, sometimes the first thing that comes to our mind is the different countries, right? We think that we're different because some people are from the United States, some people are from Mexico, some people are from Guatemala. Well, it's not just like that, because in our own classroom, if we're talking about our classrooms, we know that we have different cultures. Years ago, when I was young and full of energy, I used to, I was so excited every time that they said, "Oh, you're going to have these many Latino children," or, well, I was like, at least I will be sharing the language, because Spanish is my first language and the best language that I can use. So when I saw all these children, we have so many things that we were so different, because they were not born in Mexico, they were born in the United States, and their families, they came from different parts of Mexico. So even when they were from Mexico, we were completely different. And I remember having conversations with the parents, and they were telling me, "Well, I cook beans this way, or I cook the rice this way." So everything was completely different. And that's what it makes us, like, when we can share all these things, that's what makes us better. And every time that we are having these conversations, guess what? We're including the culture, all the cultures in our classroom. Food is culture, but also has culture. And you know why? Because we may both eat beans, okay? But we may eat them in a different way. Maybe the ingredients that we use to fix our beans are different, and when and how we serve them. So I remember, and I want you to just reflect about the memories that you have. Many of us, we love to talk about our memories with grandma. I remember my grandma, if we wanted to help in the kitchen, she was like, "No, no, no, everybody get out of the kitchen. Go and have a seat. And the children will eat first, then the adults," and she was the last one that ate. So that is part of a culture. In a different, different cultures, they do this in a different way. So now we talk a little bit about the culture. Now let's talk about what we can teach our children. So every time that we're cooking, or every time that we're doing a taste test, we can talk about numbers. Our kids, they love to, every time when I go and teach, I do a lot of programs in preschools where I teach Color Me Healthy, or any other program. But every time when I say, "Okay, it's time to wash our hands," we're going to count from 1 to 20. And I said, who wants to count in Spanish? It doesn't matter. Sometimes I don't have nobody there that speaks Spanish, but they love to learn those numbers in Spanish. What about the letters? When we are teaching about a fruit, oh, this is an apple. Well, this is a manzana. And manzana starts with the letter M. So all those things, and I know it will have, you're going to have to invest some time in whatever you're teaching, because if you have a child that is from another country that maybe it's a harder language, you may need to do a little bit of research to be able to represent his or her culture. So another thing that you can teach is colors. Every time, in English we're describing things, but we can describe them using colors, not only in English, but in other languages. And like I mentioned before, with words, children love to learn new words. And we can always do it with songs. And sometimes the songs are kind of hard, especially if they're in a different language. But the kids can learn new sounds. It is funny when I'm talking about learning new sounds, because in my case, I didn't learn English as a child. So many of the sounds that we use in English, I can't say it. And if I say, like, for example, TH, I really have to have my brain ready to say the word to pronounce the TH sound. These at the end, it is so hard for me to pronounce. That's why sometimes when we see, sadly, but I have experienced this with my own children. My children, they learn Spanish at home, and the only language that we talk at home is Spanish. So when they start going to school, we had a little bit of trouble there. Not because it was hard for them to learn English, but because some teachers, they told my children not to speak Spanish at school. And I was very upset about that, because I want my children to be able to help other people. And I teach them like social rules. I said, you never talk bad about nobody, in any language, but especially don't use a language that other people do not know to talk about others. So when the teachers were like, no, because you're talking about me or you're talking about your friends, I talked to them and I say, no, that's not what it is. It's like, because since they were little, I taught them that they need to feel proud of their language, about their culture. And I think our role as an educators is to make everybody feel for who they are. And we, as the society, the more we learn about all these cultures, the more that we're going to accept each other.
Hi, my name is Tanisha Tyson. I'm the owner and operator of Follow the Sun Child Care. It's a five-star nonprofit child care center located in Greenville, North Carolina, and that's in Pitt County. Follow the Sun was a participant of the Farm to Education and Early Care, and we were like one of two centers chosen in Martin Pitt County. And so it was like such a great adventure. We had like nobody here knew about farming really. So we were kind of like learning together. The children were learning, the staff were learning, and the parents were also learning. Even our Martin Pitt Partnership for Children organization, they were learning along with us. So it was just like a big learning experience for everyone. So it all started with the corn. Like we grew so many crops in our garden. We had corn, squash, cucumbers, watermelons. We had everything. We even grew sunflowers. So the corn that year, for some reason, it just really grew tall. It was really pretty. It was green, but it didn't grow. It didn't survive. So we just had a field trip planned for the farmers market. And while there, we met these really nice people from an organization called Exceed. And Exceed is a nonprofit mobile farmers market. And so they answered questions for our children. Our kids were really excited about all the things they saw. They saw so many things they would see in the grocery store normally at a farmer's market. So the teachers came back. They told me about the people, how nice they were. And so I was like, well, it would be our big project. We'll have a farmer's market. And so we called people from Exceed. They got back with us. They were so excited, so eager to help us. And so that's why our farmer's market started. It all started with the corn. The parent volunteers. Like when I go and talk to people about our farmers market, I always emphasize how important parents are. Like volunteers are a big deal because we had parents that were landscapers, party event planners, just hands-on parents, that would come out and help us do things. So one of our parents, a landscaper, she helped start the garden. Like she helped us with the soil, digging up the grass, like planting the crops. So that was a start again because we did not know what we were doing. It was a learning experience, but she did that for us. And we had a parent that also helped, like dig up dirt and like really get the soil prepared for the crops. We had an aunt of one of the children. She made flyers for our farmers market, and like it was a hands-on, it was all inclusive, like everybody, the parents, the staff, the children, of course. We had outside organizations reaching out to us once they found out about the farmers market. And so everybody, all hands on deck, and the farmers market came to be. For the morning of, the children actually made a little commercial. We placed it on our social media page, and one of our media companies, local media company, 252 Buzz, they actually saw the commercial and they wanted to know could they come out and film, take pictures of the children. And Channel 9 News had actually been here the day before, and they did a story using our garden as a backdrop, talking about Farm to ECE. So once they found out the next day we were having a farmers market, they asked could they come back. And so of course we said yeah, it was exposure for us. And they came back and they did a segment on us. And we had so many people come out and like purchase from the farmers market. And at sea was really good. They bought their trailer and they bought a few things in at first. And I don't think they really thought they were going to sell that much because again, it was going to be a small event at first, and then the word got out and it kind of grew. So they had to keep going back to the trailer, bringing in more things, and we actually sold out. So that was a big deal. So the farmers market, the seed farmers market, was really good to our parents because, like, we have some children that are low income families, so they receive EBT, what is known as food stamps. And so, Seed has this offer where if you spend $20 on your EBT card, they'll give you half off your total purchase. But for our families, if they spent $10, they got half off their total purchase. So when they came to pick their children up in the afternoon, instead of going to the grocery store, they could just buy from the Follow the Sun Farmers Market and get a discount if they use their EBT card. So we did take cash, we took checks, we took money order, we took Cash App, we took EBT. So most our purchases were cash and EBT. So we had so many people from the community reach out, and our social media page played a big part in our success because people saw it and they called us or they inboxed us and asked us about it. This like a lady from the Washington Underground Railroad Museum. It's located in Washington, North Carolina. She saw the pictures on Facebook. She saw the story about the farmers market, and she asked could she come and talk to the children about the crops they grew and how slaves used them on their journey to freedom. So she came, she brought crops, and she talked to the children on their level about how slaves actually used watermelon and sunflowers and black eyed peas and cotton and just different things they could use as clues on their journey that would leave behind for the other slaves to know. Like, for instance, with sunflowers, if they saw sunflowers, they needed to be careful because there were a lot of eyes watching. They use watermelon, not just to eat the watermelon, but they actually use the watermelon to cook chicken in. And it was so creative for how they did things using the crops. So she came and talked to the children again and brought crops. And we actually went to their museum on a field trip. And the kids learned so much through the whole process, not just from the farmers market, but from farm to ECE as a whole. They learned so much. They learned where food came from. They learned that we can grow food and eat it. Like when they went to the grocery store, one parent told me how her child knew what a crookneck squash was because we grew squash and we had someone come talk to the kids about squash. So that was like a new word for him, and the fact that he recognized it. And then we had what I like to call aha moments. We had an aha moment during snack. The children were eating their apples, and one of the kids said, "I'm going to save my seeds and grow apples." So they made the connection, and we always like when they make the connection. So that was a big deal too.
One fun question for you. What's your favorite fruit or vegetable that you've grown? And what's your favorite way to prepare it?
Okay, so I don't really do the preparing. I don't like to say I do, but I don't. My cook does that. But the favorite thing we've done, and this is going to sound fun, is sunflowers. Because when we grew sunflowers, we actually harvest the seeds. So we harvest the seeds, we put ranch on some of them, like the dry powder ranch, and we put salt on some. And so the kids were able to wash them and we season them and put them in the oven. And some of them came out pretty good, and then most of them were kind of burnt because they were smaller seeds. But the sunflower seeds were fun.
In Western North Carolina, Cherokee Central Schools are also engaging students in healthy eating while connecting them to Native culture. This school in the eastern band of the Cherokee Nation integrates Cherokee culture into all aspects of learning. Specifically, in the garden, they've planted traditional Cherokee crops with edible, medicinal, and craft uses, like corn varieties with hard seeds that can be used for making jewelry. Also, many of the heirloom crops grown in the garden came from seeds handed down by generations of local Cherokee farmers, which students have marked with colorful signs that label the plants in both English and Cherokee. A garden chat.
That's right, a garden chat, since we can't have a garden chat in person. I am Karen Wilkerson, and I'm the director at Kitty College, which is a family-owned business, and we have been in operation since 1974, so 46 years that we have been doing it. My parents started Kitty College, and I'm just carrying the torch on. So as far as how we first got the garden, or as we got into this gardening, it's part of two projects that we're participating in. One is DINE, which is through the health department, and that's part of helping children as far as being exposed to different types of food and healthy eating and those type of things. So that was the first part. The second part of how we got into gardening is the project Shape NC that we're participating in, which has three components. One is where the children are being like the active, the active part. And so teachers were given activities and work with a TA on physical activities and things that they can do in the classroom, out on the playground, and add in there. The second component is the nutrition part, and that's where also healthy eating comes in, and eating more of the fresh fruits and vegetables, and just experiencing different kinds of foods than what they've been used to. The third component is the fighting obesity by design, is what they call, is how they label it, and it's what is changing your playground actually to an outdoor learning environment, so that you it's like a classroom outside. You can do the same things outside that you do inside. So from those two projects is how we ended up getting into the gardening, and just trying to help the children as as far as the gardening, getting more of the fruits and vegetables, learning more about where food comes from, which as far as with the gardening and helping with different areas, it's helping with their social emotional development, because they develop the leadership skills, taking turns, and a sense of working together. They have to, because the garden is their responsibility. It's not just mine. As I tell them, it's not my responsibility. It's not the teacher's responsibility. It's not just the children's responsibility. It's all of ours. So that, is developing a sense of community, because we're all working together. When they come out and water the garden, they've got to take turns watering the garden. They harvest, and also picking weeds, which is their least favorite thing to do. And so and then you see from that how leadership skills are building, because there's usually each day, and it's not necessarily the same child, that will kind of take a leadership role and start kind of directing people and tell them, okay, today you need to pick over here. You need to pick some of these. You need to, this doesn't look like it's ready to be picked. So it's just kind of developing all of those skills. So, it has a multifaceted approach and benefit to the program. So, and one other thing that I look at as far as with the gardening is, the enhancements that is given to our program. And the children, they have developed some new skills because they got to have responsibility, because they got to take care of the plants. I tell them, every day, especially now with it being so hot, it's like you got to make sure you water these plants every day. And then they understand, that's another thing, is understanding that they learn about cause and effect, because if you don't water the plant, then the plant's going to die.
Right.
And also, as you water the plants, that also makes the weeds grow more, so then you have more weeds that you have to pick out. So so that, and then it also teaches them, I think, something with self-confidence, because I mean, to see their faces when, these things started. Some of them we started from seeds, and some of them they started from small plants. But to just see their excitement, and when, they pick something, well, they see it grow, and then they pick it, and then we have it for, you know, lunch or snack or whatever. They've had pizzas that they have made, where they have put the tomatoes and the basil that have come out of their gardens on the pizza. Um, we've had, trying to think, we've done a lot of different things with tomatoes, because what is so abundant right now, the tomatoes and the basil. But we've got peppers, so they put a little bit of green peppers on their pizza. And we also, I think it's also helping us connect with the community. Our center is in a neighborhood, so there are people that are walking up and down the street, you know, now, because it's just more people just kind of walk. We're near a university, so that's kind of quiet right now. But even our neighbors have, they'll stop if we're out watering or something, and they'll stop out on the sidewalk and talk about how they've grown, what it's grown and what we're growing. And we've had so much that we've offered that, fruits and, well, vegetables, tomatoes and stuff to the neighbors. And the parents too. The parents, it helps with parent engagement, because I tell parents that, hey, you could come out and weed anytime you want. You can come and pick vegetables. I have one parent, a grandparent, that's in culinary school. So, it's like basil she wants, because we have an abundance of that as well. Spices, she can come get those. And that's one of the suggestions that I've made, as we, work on social distancing, because I only want one parent at the door at a time dropping off a child. So I told them, if there's another parent there, just spend time in the garden and, weed or harvest and stuff or something. So, that helps with, that's how we're kind of helping with the community engagement. You know, one of the most important things that I think everybody has to realize, that it is going to take some effort. And teachers, as teachers and stuff, they've got to really buy into the idea of working in the garden and how it can help the children and help the classrooms. And right now it's better to try to be outside as much as you can, and then that gives you an opportunity to get the children outside and get the fresh air, and also learn the skills that I have talked about before. But it's just the I think one of the main most important components is that people, everybody, everyone, teachers, administrators, children, and all, we just have to buy into it and accept ownership for it. And in order to do that, then it will be back to the tomatoes, because we do have some that are red also.
Mhm.
And so they were like, I don't like tomatoes. So I was like, really? I said, so when we have chicken nuggets, when we've had the chicken nuggets, and you ask for ketchup to go on your chicken nuggets, then where do you think ketchup comes from? And of course, their answer to that was, it comes from the store. I said, so I was like, yes, it does. But do you know that ketchup is made from tomatoes? Just like these ones that out here that you said you didn't like. And it was just kind of the look on their face was like, what? It's like, no, it's like ketchup comes out of the store. So I think it's just, that was, to me, that was funny, because it's like you just don't even know. It's like you don't like ketchup, but you like tomato. I mean, you don't like tomatoes, but you'll eat ketchup. It's all the same thing. And then what was amazing is that that was actually another learning experience, because they're realizing now that stuff that's in the store, it's coming from someplace else. It's not just magically appearing in the store. Somebody's got to grow it, and just like they're doing. So that, I mean, that's kind of rewarding, because you're giving them experiences that at an early age that they may not get. But I do have one tip for people as they're starting a garden. I thought about this the other day, is that you need to be mindful of how much you're planting at one time, because this stuff got a whole lot bigger than I had imagined. Because I'm a beginner gardener. I'm learning as I go. And so next year when we do a garden, instead of 4 tomato plants, we'll probably have 1, because that'll be plenty. It's like you get so much, it's so much, and it gets so big that it gets kind of hard to take care of, and also hard to use, because I mean, we send it out, we even I've given stuff to the neighbors. So, and the zucchini, it got a lot bigger than I thought. I mean, I had no idea. So it took over a whole flower bed, a raised bed. So my recommendation, or I guess, lesson learned is, don't plant too much. Just plant a little bit and see how, kind of determine how big it's going to get. And then, move on from there. What I have really learned, I mean, enjoyed the most, and it's basically because of all of I do this, is to see the children's expressions and to see their faces, and to see that excitement and that kind of wonder, that kind of look on their face, like, you know, how did this happen, and where did this come from? And just exposing them to things that they may not have had an opportunity to see, or for the first time. And I think that's what, as I tell people, it gets me up in the morning, and, you know, just gets me excited about the garden, and just coming to work in general is just, it's their faces and their excitement, and, their amazement, and just knowing that, you know, they're just learning so many new things right now. And and I guess that's kind of cliche, but I mean, that's what it is for me, is their excitement, and they're coming. And because sometimes in the mornings they'll come in and say, you know when they first started blooming, when things first started coming out, they were like, I see some tomatoes, are they ready? I see something growing. And then when they started the ones turning red, there's something red in there. It's just exciting to them.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this webinar today. I hope you were able to learn a little bit more about the Farm to ECE concept, see how leaders were incorporating this work into their gardens, their classrooms, their everyday lives. And I really just appreciate everybody that contributed and made this webinar possible. Here are additional resources for continued learning. Whether you want resources about gardening, local procurement, or education, or racial equity in the food system, these are great resources. Thank you again for everybody tuning in and who helped contribute to this webinar. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.